welcome to part 2 of our Ticket to Ride CinemaCon wrap-up. As if it wasn't enough that Mike Polydorus and I gave you a poolside view from a cabana live from CinemaCon, there was just so much here, Mike. I don't know, this is the sequel to our part 1.
Well, as we said in the previous podcast, Paul, there were 56 titles that were showcased on the stage in the Coliseum. That doesn't even count titles that they just talked about. I'm talking about 56 films that we actually saw footage for.
Who counted that up? Amanda Rufner on your team?
She made it very easy because she did such a great job on the recaps. I just was able to go through and give those numbers. As a matter of fact, I passed them on to Mitch over at CinemaCon, who had no idea it was that many. So anyway, as we left off the other day, we had wrapped on Disney. They had done a great screening of Boogeyman. Everybody kind of took a breather. And then next up that afternoon, we had a nice party. Lionsgate, our good friends, threw a wonderful party for us. I saw you over there, Paul.
I was there. That was at Gordon Ramsay's Pub and Grill. It was very good.
It was great. So then our friends at Universal kicked off the evening, and they started with a movie that I know is near and dear to your heart. They had Christopher Nolan come out and talk to us about a little film called Oppenheimer.
Yeah, this is clearly an Oscar caliber movie. I think this is one to look out for. And we talked a little bit about it on part 1, I believe, of our two-parter CinemaCon podcast. But to me, this just looks like pure cinema. I am so excited about this film because, as I always bore people with, my dad was a rocket scientist, and I grew up being regaled with tales of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the Manhattan Project. And so for me, this really resonates strongly. I think it's one of those movies where people are going to be entertained, but also educated. That's the thing, though, that Nolan does. He will take these subjects that are mind-bending and mind-blowing and make them palatable for the audience. And this one, I think, just talk about a cast. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. and Matt Damon, and obviously Cillian Murphy, who looks exactly like J. Robert Oppenheimer, waiting his turn to lead a Nolan film. He's been in other Christopher Nolan films. Now Cillian Murphy coming to the forefront. No pressure on him to deliver on one of the biggest movie projects ever.
Well, the one thing I also wanted to point out on this is that there's kind of a subplot going on in this movie, and I think it's a story that hasn't been told, because I think a lot of people are like, how are they going to make this a big screen movie? And that was, we assume all of the science and technology now will just work because it has. But at the time, it was all revolutionary. And there was a slim chance that what these guys were doing would have had a catastrophic effect on the planet and the ecosystem.
Catastrophic. They didn't know if it would destroy the whole world.
That is something that I don't think the mainstream public is aware of. And I think this brings out that topic and adds another layer of drama and intrigue to a film that just looks like it's going to be fantastic.
I had an opportunity to chat with Christopher Nolan, and a book that he recommended, if you're really into this, is called American Prometheus. And it's a book, it's a Pulitzer Prize-winning book about J. Robert Oppenheimer, his whole upbringing. It's on Audible as well. I have no interest in the book, no financial interest. I just really enjoyed the book itself. And then it goes beyond the Manhattan Project and what happened after the development of the atomic bomb and the nuclear bomb and all that stuff that went on at that time. And so American Prometheus, just a book that is a must-read if you're into J. Robert Oppenheimer. And maybe a good idea, Mike, with some Christopher Nolan movies to read an entire book about the subject before seeing the movie. But I know, as a great storyteller that he is, and his wife, Emma Thomas, his longtime producing partner, they're going to lay it out for us so that even I can understand it, Mike.
Well, and the great thing about the Universal presentation is we go from something as serious as Oppenheimer to Chris Meldrone from Illumination came out. And of course, they're basking in Super Mario, which is going to be on the heels of Incredibles 2 to be the highest grossing animated film of all time.
And it's just crossed the $1 billion mark worldwide. Pretty amazing.
And he rolled out some footage for his next film that's coming up in December, Migration, which is an original story based on some ducks who go on a family road trip, which looked absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, I love the title. I love the conceit of this movie. It looks great. And look, when it comes to Illumination and Chris Meledandri or Dondry, forgive me if I mispronounced, but there's just a different attitude and point of view that Illumination has, was so perfectly represented with the Despicable Me and that entire franchise and Minions, Super Mario. So anything from Illumination, you can count me in.
And then we got to see a clip and Will Ferrell from one of the films I'm really looking forward to this summer, and that is Strays, which is produced by my good friend Eric Feig. I got to tell you, Will Ferrell killed up there.
He brought a dog. One of the dogs from the movie was in his arms up there on stage.
You know, the back and forth that Will did with the dog was great. But the scene they showed, and for anybody who doesn't know, this is in the vein of Ted, live action, dogs that are talking, but it's R-rated. This is not for the kiddies.
No, definitely not. It is like Ted because you're right. It's very similar in the sense of it's about a subject that you would think would be very much juvenile, like for kids or whatever. It's about little dogs running around. But no, this is not for kids. But that's what makes it so cool. It takes the conventions of movie making and turns our expectations on its side. And that one looked cool. They're doing a lot of great marketing for Strays. And if you love dogs like I do, you're all in on this one.
I think so. And then October 13th has the next chapter in the Exorcist story. And like Jason Blum did with Halloween, they're kind of going back, revisiting the Exorcist in the same universe as the first film. Ellen Burstyn actually makes a appearance in the film.
I saw that. Ellen Burstyn. Yep. Amazing.
I mean, it looks great.
Mike, here's the thing. It looks great, but I got to say, you're messing with the Mona Lisa. I mean, look, The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, The Exorcist sequels, not for me. The first film was an absolute brilliant film that, by the way, I think opened the day after Christmas. What a Christmas movie.
That is true.
The Exorcist back in 1973 or 4.
Paul, I was 9. Get up.
I think I was 10. I think I was 9 too.
Yeah, I think we're about the same age.
But The Exorcist, the original, is just regarded as one of the greatest films of all time. So I remember as a kid, my sisters took me to see it. They snuck me in because it's very R-rated, and I watched the entire movie through my fingers. Anyway, great movie.
We couldn't go any farther on the opposite end. DreamWorks Animation came out. Talk about an embarrassment of riches for our friends at Universal. Not only do they have Illumination, but they also have the DreamWorks Animation library. And DreamWorks Animation is ramping back up. First film out is Ruby Gilliman, Teenage Kraken, which comes out on June 30th. You know, the story of an ordinary teenager who learns that they turn into giant krakens as they enter womanhood. So,
Mike, where did they come up with this stuff?
She's got to save the world, but it looked fun.
It did look fun.
It looked really fun. And then after making a kind of a side trip to streaming, thanks to the pandemic, Trolls is coming back to the big screen with Trolls 3 band together on November 17th.
Anna Kendrick, Justin Timberlake, and Trolls World Tour. I think one of the first films, if not the first one, to move to streaming when the pandemic shut down theaters, a day we hate to talk about, but it's great to see Trolls come back wholeheartedly to the big screen.
And I love the story in this one where Timberlake's character is to have been found out that he once was in, believe it or not, a boy band. Where do they think of this stuff? How is that possible?
I don't know. I don't know where that came from.
It looks a lot of fun. And then probably one of the highlights of the week, there was no footage shown, but there was an announcement that Kung Fu Panda 4 is coming back. And they brought Jack Black out to basically enact the entire story plot. Physical comedy. He was great.
Jack Black, he is a force of nature. Every time he's on stage, he sings. He's bigger than life. I love Jack Black. He's all in on all this stuff, so that's really cool.
And then, of course, our friends from Focus Feature came out, and as we have come to expect, they had a really, really cool, eclectic slate coming up. The first one, which I can't wait to see, is Wes Anderson's Asteroid City.
Oh, Mike, I love Wes Anderson. His last film, The French Dispatch, I liked it. It wasn't in my top 5, Wes Anderson. This is going to be in my top 5. I mean,
this looks great.
You look at Grand Budapest, the Royal Tenenbaums, Rushmore. I mean, just his amazing vision. And kudos always to his set designers, prop masters, costume designers. They all earn their pay on a Wes Anderson movie. But he is a true visionary filmmaker whose name above the title gets people to go see it, no matter what the movie is.
And then our good friend Paul Brooks, who we spoke to about Champions, has his next movie coming up.
Of course.
My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3.
Yes.
on September 8th. The family is heading to Greece. It looks like a lot more fun with that group.
And Paul Brooks was a guest on one of our earlier Ticket to Ride podcasts, so check that out. He's the producer on this, a great guy. This movie, I think it's time for another big fat Greek wedding movie to be on the big screen. That's September 8th. That's another one to look out for. Mike, there's just too many movies.
Well, and I think that the fun thing about what they did here is they're kind of turning the plot on its end. So the fish out of water, instead of being the Greek culture in America, it's the American culture going back to native Greece. So
there you go.
Looks like a lot of fun. Here's a movie that I didn't know anything about coming into the convention and is now very much on my radar, and that is The Holdovers with Paul Giamatti.
Yeah.
You know, basically, it's about a couple of misfits on different ends of the spectrum. You have a misfit teacher at a private school. You have a misfit kid and a school administrator who kind of all get stuck with each other over the holidays. And it looks like there's some real emotional bonding that goes on there.
And I'm so glad to see this, Mike, because Alexander Payne, he's one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. Election, About Schmidt, Sideways, The Descendants, Nebraska. Then came Downsizing, which for me wasn't at the pinnacle. The Holdovers looks like a total return for this amazing filmmaker who really 99% of the time knocks it out of the park. I love Paul Giamatti in Sideways, still one of my favorite characters in buddy duos with Thomas Hayden Church, Jack and Miles going around wine country in the Central Coast. So anything with Paul Giamatti and Alexander Payne, count me in. I'm really excited for this one.
It looks really good. And then talk about a quirky movie. This is from Ethan Coen, and it's called Drive Away Dolls. This one, another one that was not necessarily on my radar. This is two young girls accidentally rent a car that a group of criminals happen to be looking for as they stash some stuff in there, and they have no idea they're wanted by everybody by the time it's done.
And it's Jonah Hill's sister, right? Beanie Feldstein from Booksmart.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Beanie Feldstein. She's great. And Margaret Qualley, who was also in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And look, Ethan Coen is the director on this. And, of course, the Coen brothers, as we know, are brilliant filmmakers. This is a road trip thriller. Really excited about this one. And this is what I love what you said, Mike, was that some of these movies weren't on my radar either. Why? Because they're not these big blockbusters, right? But that's what Focus does. Lisa Bonnell and her team, they're really filmmaker-centric. And they, as I always say with independent film, the curator is the studio. You can count on Focus Features to deliver. Just follow their guidance and go to the movie theater. You may not have heard of some of these movies, but you will. And that's why we have to support independent film on the big screen. Now I'm going to get off my soapbox. Thank you.
And then Universal then rolled out the cast for Fast X. Actually, they did something really cool, I thought, in this one, and that is they went over the whole franchise, movie by movie, showing the key art from each film, explaining what the movie was, how we got to Fast X, and
Mike, is it Fast 10 or Fast X? I
keep hearing it. You know, it's Super Mario Bros. Or Brothers. What do you want to call it? You know, I'm going with Fast X because it's Fast 10 clearly, but
it looks like Fast X to me. I'm not even messing with you. I actually don't know, but I'm...
Yeah. Well, bottom line is, you know, more of what we've come to expect from this franchise, and it's going to be a big win. Again, it comes in 2 weeks from now, so it's the week after
Guardians.
It's 2 weeks
right?
after Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
on
and
the
I love
19th.
that too, because the second weekend of May usually gives a buffer to that Marvel movie that opens at the beginning of May or late April. And then to have Fast X or Fast N come in like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
This is going to be a massive summer. It's such a big summer that sometimes you forget, oh yeah, also there's a Fast and Furious movie. There's an Indiana Jones movie. There's a Mission Impossible movie. There's a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. There's Barbie. There's Oppenheimer. I mean, you could just keep going on and on. But yes, this is a big deal. Jordana Brewster, Michelle Rodriguez, Vin Diesel, of course, Charlize Theron, Helen Mirren, Jason. I mean, the gang is back. Of course, Paul Walker. We always have to give a shout to the late Paul Walker, without whom we wouldn't be here with Fast 10.
And then real quick, they showed talked about a couple of films that are coming up. They had Ryan Gosling come out for The Fall Guy, which is based on the 80s TV series,
Yep.
which is coming in March of 2024. And then obviously they showed a scene from Wicked, which is in production now, which is going to be for holiday Thanksgiving of 2024.
That got a big response there.
That is going to be huge. Huge. People have been waiting for this one for a while. And
no, but I mean, look at that, though. They're even committing to November and December of 2024 and 2025. This is the confidence that movie studios have in movie theaters.
You know, Universal's all in on this. And, you know, they're laying it out and they're telling you why it's going to work and why they're going to be able to pull it off.
And Mike, what is the dream of every studio? To have a new franchise.
Create a new franchise. If you can do it, that's great. And Universal's taken quite a few swings for it this year.
For sure.
And then that takes us to our friends at Paramount. We're now at Thursday morning. So we came in and our good friend Chris Aronson, who does not disappoint. So I see Chris right before the presentation and he's standing out in the lobby and I do a quick what is this? Chris, we expect big spectacles from you on stage.
That's right.
And of course he says, yeah, I'm not on stage this year. Which I didn't believe for a second, but it's okay. And we get in, and of course, the immediate, for everyone who wasn't there, Paramount kicked it off with a big production number, which was really great for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
And they had a DJ out there, like, scratching those records. I think it was live.
It was live. It was definitely live.
Whoever that DJ was, I don't know who it was, but they killed it.
It was great. And then Chris came out from underneath the stage, dressed in a turtle outfit.
Wait, Mike, let me back up there. Chris Aronson came out from like a sewer.
Right.
He
comes from the sewer because that's where the turtles are from.
Yep.
Delivered pizza to the front row of the Coliseum because
Chris Aronson, he came out with a pizza box and literally delivered pizza to people.
That's dedication. That is dedication.
And do you want me to recount Seth Rogen's line, or is it too... So Seth Rogen came out as a producer of the movie and said, "That's where all studio executives come from, the sewers."
It was great.
That got a big laugh. It was
great.
all in good fun. But yeah, Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg are producers on the movie. And again, taking iconic IP like the Ninja Turtles, updating it, modernizing it, making it cool for today's audiences. I think that's a great way to go with Nickelodeon Movies co-production there.
Seth brought up a couple of things that I think are great. He was a fan of this show since he was a young child.
Yes.
So, you know, you're putting the franchise in the hands of someone who truly appreciates it. And the second thing he said is their goal was to make the Turtles teenagers and to think and talk like teenagers.
And the actors, therefore, are actual teenagers.
And you can tell in the footage they showed, there's a fun aura about it that they've accomplished, I think, what they're looking to do.
And it has like a graphic novel feel to it. The look and feel is very graphic novel-y, if that's a way to put it. So, yeah, Paramount had a great presentation. Of course, no Paramount presentation would be complete without Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. We got all excited because it said, "We are going to show you."
Yeah.
And then we thought, the whole movie? And it's like they did with Top Gun last year. No, a 20-minute extended car chase scene that had to be seen to be believed. Tom Cruise does not disappoint. McHugh, Chris McQuarrie, who is the director, writer, who's done... I mean, before Christopher McQuarrie joined Mission, every movie had a different director, whether it was Brian De Palma, John Woo, they were all always... But now they've hit their stride with this combination of Chris McQuarrie and Tom Cruise clearly loving this. And this is just part one of a two-part, I don't know if this is the finale. I can't imagine. John Wick will never end and Mission Impossible will never end. Let's just say it.
Paramount also showed us a clip from the new Transformer film, Rise of the Beast.
That's right.
Which looks to be a little bit of a kind of resetting the story a little bit.
They're reinventing it, resetting it. You make a good point, Mike. That's really what it is. So Transformers, Mission, Paramount had just a great lineup of films. They've already had a great year so far with a lot of big movies out there.
A couple of more I just want to touch on real quick is you had mentioned in our previous podcast, Killers of the Flower Moon, which looks fantastic. That's the Apple film that Paramount's going to release in October. And again, that's Martin Scorsese with both Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro.
And Robert De Niro, his two longtime muses, if you will. And by the way, this movie is based on a true story, a really intense and tragic chapter in American history, and they're bringing it to light. And I think it's going to be really... I mean, the fact, again, that it's Apple Movies working in coordination with a major studio like Paramount, that just shows the importance of the movie theater and working with studios like Paramount who know how to market and distribute films in the movie theater. They've been kind of doing it a long time. And just to go back to the Warner's thing, they're celebrating their 100th year, which was really cool.
Yeah, no, it's, well, both them and Disney are celebrating 100 this year.
That's right.
It's Disney 100 as well.
Yeah.
Ziggy Marley came out to talk about the documentary of his father, Bob Marley, One Love. Then Quiet Place, Day One, which is the origin story of, how we got to the place we did to in A Quiet Place.
Looks like the franchise is in good hands on this one. It's really the origin story. I just want to remind people that we talk a lot about the movies that brought back or helped bring back the movie theater during the pandemic. And I just want to give a shout out to A Quiet Place Part 2, which actually had a huge result when it opened back on May 28 of 2021. That really kicked off the summer of 21. And if we recall, that was a very slow time at the box office, but that movie went on to earn $300 million worldwide. To me, A Quiet Place Part 2 has to be mentioned as one of the films that also helped show us the way that the movie theater could come back. A Quiet Place Day One, I mean, it's perfectly set up for this whole franchise to find out the origin story of this entire crazy situation with space aliens and not making noise in the movie theater, as we should not.
I'm looking forward to this next film, which is If. And If is another movie that I've been saying that a lot on this podcast, and that wasn't really on my radar, and that is what happens to the imaginary friends that all these children have when they grow up, and the imaginary friends have nowhere to go. And If becomes the story of a young girl who basically, something happens and she becomes the conduit to all the lost imaginary friends. And Ryan Reynolds stars in the film. This one, Paul, really looks special.
And it was funny because when John Krasinski came out, they showed a video of him going out to theaters on behalf of A Quiet Place Part 2 and surprising moviegoers. I mean, everybody mentions Christopher Nolan, of course, loving the movie theater experience, and Tom Cruise and really defending it. But John Krasinski was actually out there, again, getting the time machine, go back to May 28 of 2021, that weekend when A Quiet Place Part 2 opened, and they showed footage of John going out and introducing the film to really excited people, all wearing masks in the movie theater. But that was so cool. And he did mention that he wanted to make a movie that he could show his kids before they turned 40, because he directed Quiet Place Part 2. So yeah, that was kind of cool. So that's If is another one to look out for.
And the voice cast in this one, Steve Carell, Maya Rudolph, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Aquafina, among others.
Fantastic.
This one feels really special and something to really keep our eye out on.
Absolutely.
And then the last one I wanted, the last studio we saw Thursday afternoon was our friends at Lionsgate.
That's right.
And we got a sneak peek of the next Hunger Games film, Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And I got to tell you, that trailer looked really good.
It looks great. And I love this too, Mike, because Francis Lawrence, the director, directed Constantine, I Am Legend, Water for Elephants. Then, of course, The Hunger Games Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, worked with Jennifer Lawrence with Red Sparrow, and now the latest Hunger Games movie for November 17. So this is just a great franchise for Lionsgate. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
And then finally, they screened a movie that they had screened at South by Southwest that got a huge reaction out of there. Joyride. And I got to tell you, Paul, that movie was, I had tears coming out of my eyes on that one. It was absolutely hilarious. It's directed by Adele Lim, who wrote Crazy Rich Asians. And then the four leading actors were out there: Ashley Park, Stephanie Hu, Sherry Cola, and Sabrina Wu, as well as Seth Rogen was on stage with them, as Point Grey was a producing partner on the film. And Adam did a great job, Adam Fogelson, of kind of talking to the cast and getting, their take on what the movie meant to them. The movie, again, very funny. In the summer of the R-rated comedies, this one's probably going to stand out quite a bit.
They're really high on this movie. This movie has a ton of buzz, as we like to say, and that's great for Lionsgate. And coming off of the success of John Wick, they've got to be on a real high over there at Lionsgate, deservedly so. The team was well represented, the Lionsgate team. David Spitz, our dear friend, whom we love and admire, and he's such a great guy, and Joe Drake and Adam Fogelson were all there to represent for Lionsgate with their entire team. And that was really, really great to see. That's a pretty good wrap up. But Mike, we need to talk about real quick John Fithian. And I know just somebody that is a legend in our industry. He's retiring. I think the official word went out today. There was a press release this morning. We're talking on Monday, May 1st here. So just have to give an incredible shout out to somebody who's been just a champion of the movie theater. And NATO salutes John Fithian today on the announcement of 30 years, the end of 30 years of service to the theatrical exhibition industry.
Well, I've known John a long time. John is really a good guy. And I like to say, he's a good guy with a very tough gig. Being the president and CEO of NATO is not the easiest thing to do.
And during the pandemic.
I mean, he and his team did a really, really good job, I thought. And John has always been a big supporter of mine personally. When we launched Paper Airplane, my first call was to John because I knew that John would also be very unabashed in how he gave me his opinion. If he didn't think it was going to be a good idea, he would have...
Oh, he's a straight shooter. He would have told you right away, Mike, no, don't do it, and ignore it.
Right.
You're getting the authentic answer from John Fithian for sure.
He was supportive from day one. Just a great guy. Gonna miss working with him on a regular basis.
I don't think we've heard the last of him. I just don't see him.
But I also
what I mean?
knowing John, he's definitely not going to fade away. He's going to slow down, though.
Yeah. Well, 1992, I think, is when he began as general counsel at NATO. I mean, we're talking 30 years. But I just know that he's like the greatest defender of our... Not that it... I mean, well, let's go back. It has needed defending at times.
Think about, while he's been president and CEO of NATO, he's had to navigate through release window, distribution strategy issues, navigate through a pandemic when everybody was putting the death knell into the theatrical business, into exhibition. He navigated, and his team, including Patrick and Jackie, have done an amazing job of keeping everything on the track, so to speak.
And they always kept the faith. They never, obviously never gave up, but that wasn't just hubris or just for the cameras. It was for real.
Yeah.
John Fithian is a man who loves the movie theater, his whole team, and you can feel it. It's baked into the DNA. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention John Fithian on his retirement. But retiring is one thing, but like you said, he may just slow down a bit, but I know this guy, and I know he's going to keep going for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, that, Paul, was a 2-part capsule of the week that was last week.
Wait, are we done?
That is, believe it or not, that took us through all the titles.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap right there.
That's a wrap on CinemaCon 2023.
I want to acknowledge, so as we went through all of that, we were basically, every movie we talked about in a very positive light. Now, let's be serious. We've all been in this business for a long time. They're all not going to succeed at the levels that everybody hopes they will. But the big point of what we saw was the studios are putting their best foot forward on this. They are creating content that is meant to be seen in movie theaters. How the movie gods shine on that, how these projects end up at the end of the day, that's a different story. And, we all know about the ebbs and flows of that. I can tell you this, Paul, that of the 30-odd CinemaCons I've been to, there has never been so much positive energy kind of coming out of one of these. It just really feels like we're all headed in the right direction.
We're back, baby.
We are back. And again, this isn't will we be back? This is just to what levels will we be back? Will we exceed where we were? Time will tell.
It's up to the movie gods, as you always call them, and you're exactly right. It's also up to the moviegoers, without whom we wouldn't have a business.
I just want to, before we wrap real quick, it's all you have to do is look at the current state of the box office to say, if you give the people, and, everyone's probably sick of me saying this, it is all about the content. You're talking about Mario in week 4 doing over $40 million. Why? Everybody wants to see the movie.
Right. I know you're right. In week 4, it hasn't had a drop over 40% in any of its weekends.
No.
And now heading into, with right around the corner, Guardians of the Galaxy, I agree with you. This was the most positive CinemaCon maybe ever because of what the industry has gone through since March of 2020. And there's no asterisk next to this CinemaCon. This was full on, felt like a total return to form. Couldn't have been more exciting. Mike, it was great to be there with you. at CinemaCon, my co-host of our Ticket to Ride Comscore podcast. I'm Paul DeGarabedian, Senior Media Analyst for Comscore, and Mike Polydorus, President of Paper Airplane Media. That was a two-parter. Enjoy both. Feel free to skip around if you like. There's a lot there. So we appreciate our listeners, don't we, Mike?
We do. And I had so many people come up to me last week talking about how much they enjoyed the podcast. Thank you so much for everyone who listens.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
We've got a couple of fun guests coming up over the next couple of weeks. So
we do. So look out for that on Ticket to Ride. All right, Mike.
All right, Paul. Have a great one.
I'll see you soon.